The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Captain Marcus stood at his post near the eastern gate. He had served as a royal guard for 12 years, and nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The sound of crying broke through the usual morning silence. It was not the cry of a spoiled child throwing a tantrum, but something deeper, more desperate. Marcus turned his head toward the sound, his hand instinctively moving to his sword. Through the ornate iron gates, he saw a small figure stumbling toward the palace. It was a girl, no more than 8 years old, with torn clothes and dirt covering her face. Her left leg dragged behind her, leaving a faint trail of blood on the cobblestones. Marcus felt his heart tighten in his chest. In all his years of service, he had never seen a child in such a state approach the palace gates. The other guards noticed too. Lieutenant James, a younger officer, moved to block the gate. "Stop right there," he called out, his voice firm but uncertain. The girl did not stop. She continued forward, each step seeming to cause her tremendous pain. Her small hands gripped the iron bars of the gate, and she looked up at the guards with eyes that had seen too much suffering for someone so young. Marcus walked toward the gate. Pushing past James, he knelt down to the girl's level, studying her face. There were bruises along her jaw, and her right eye was swollen. "What happened to you, child?" he asked gently. The girl opened her mouth to speak, but only a sob came out. She tried again, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, sir. I need to see the judge. They hurt my mama. They hurt all of us." The words struck Marcus like a physical blow. He had heard many stories during his time at the palace, but something about this girl's desperate plea touched something deep inside him. He looked back at the other guards, who were watching with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Lieutenant James shook his head slightly, a silent warning. Palace protocol was clear. No unauthorized persons were allowed inside, especially not injured street children who could be part of some elaborate scheme. But Marcus had never been one to follow rules blindly. He had become a guard to protect people, not to turn away those who needed help most. He made a decision that would change everything. Without asking permission from his superior officers, he unlocked the gate and stepped through. The girl looked up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked. The girl shook her head, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. Without another word, Marcus bent down and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her small body trembling against his chest. The moment he picked her up, Lieutenant James stepped forward. "Captain, what are you doing?" "You know the rules." Marcus turned to face his fellow guard, his jaw set with determination. "I know the rules, James. I also know what is right. This child needs help, and she says she needs to see a judge. I am taking her to the courthouse." James looked uncertain, glancing between Marcus and the girl. "The commander will have your head for this," he warned. Marcus nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But I will not be able to live with myself if I turn her away and something terrible happens because of it." He began walking toward the palace, the girl held securely in his arms. Behind him, he could hear the other guards whispering among themselves, but he did not look back. The girl rested her head against his shoulder, her small body relaxing slightly for the first time since she had appeared at the gates. As they crossed the palace grounds, servants and officials stopped to stare. Some pointed and whispered. Others looked away in disgust at the dirty child being carried through their pristine corridors. Marcus ignored them all, his focus solely on getting this girl to someone who could help her. The girl's breathing was shallow, and he could feel her heart beating rapidly against his chest. "What is your name?" he asked softly as they walked. The girl lifted her head slightly, her voice still weak. "Emma, sir. My name is Emma." Marcus gave her a reassuring smile. "Well, Emma, my name is Marcus. You are safe now. Nobody will hurt you while I am here." Emma nodded, but her eyes remained filled with fear and pain. They reached the main palace building, and Marcus pushed through the heavy oak doors. Inside, the grand hallway stretched before them, lined with portraits of past kings and queens. The marble floors gleamed in the light streaming through tall windows. It was a stark contrast to the broken, bloodied child in his arms. A palace administrator approached them, his face twisted in disgust and concern. "Captain Marcus, what is the meaning of this? You cannot bring that child in here. Look at her. She is filthy and bleeding on the floors." The administrator pulled out a handkerchief and held it to his nose, as if Emma's presence offended his very senses. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm and steady. "This child needs medical attention and says she must speak with a judge. Where is Judge Harrison today?" The administrator looked shocked. "Judge Harrison is in session in the royal courtroom, but surely you do not mean to interrupt him with this street urchin." Marcus stepped closer to the administrator, his eyes hard as steel. "This street urchin, as you call her, is a human being who has been hurt and needs help. Now tell me where the courtroom is, or step aside so I can find it myself." The administrator stepped back, clearly intimidated by Marcus's tone and presence. "Third floor, west wing," he muttered before hurrying away, still shaking his head in disapproval. Marcus adjusted his hold on Emma and began climbing the grand staircase. Each step seemed to take forever, but he refused to put her down. Emma deserved dignity, and he would make sure she received it as they climbed. Emma spoke again, her voice growing stronger despite her pain. "They said nobody would believe me, sir. They said I was just a poor girl and that nobody cares about people like us. But my mama always said there was still good in the world. She said I should never stop believing that someone would help us. Are you that someone, Mr. Marcus?" The question hung in the air, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He looked down at the brave little girl in his arms and made a silent promise. "Yes, Emma, I am going to make sure you are heard. Whatever you need to say, the judge will listen. I give you my word." Emma nodded and closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to rest as Marcus carried her toward justice. The heavy wooden doors of the royal courtroom stood before Marcus like the gates to another world. He could hear voices inside, the formal tone of legal proceedings echoing through the thick wood. 2 guards stood at attention on either side of the doors, their faces impassive as they watched Marcus approach with Emma in his arms. One of them, a guard named Thomas, whom Marcus had trained years ago, looked at him with concern. "Captain Marcus, court is in session. Judge Harrison is hearing a property dispute between Lord Whitmore and the Merchants' Guild. You cannot interrupt," Thomas said quietly, his eyes darting to Emma's injured form. Marcus met his gaze steadily. "This child has been severely injured and claims she has urgent testimony that cannot wait. I am bringing her before the judge." Thomas stepped aside reluctantly, knowing Marcus's reputation for doing what he believed was right regardless of consequences. The other guard, however, remained blocking the door. "Sir, with respect, this is highly irregular. If the commander finds out you disrupted court proceedings without authorization, you could lose your position." Marcus nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in those words. "Then I suppose I will find out today what matters more to me, my position or my conscience." He moved forward, and the guard finally stepped aside, though his expression showed clear disapproval. Marcus pushed open the heavy doors with his shoulder, careful not to jostle Emma too much. The courtroom fell silent the moment he entered. Every head turned toward the interruption, faces registering shock and confusion at the sight of a royal guard. Carrying a bloodied child into the formal proceedings, Judge Harrison, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, sat behind his elevated bench. He had been mid-sentence when Marcus entered, and now his words hung unfinished in the air. On one side of the courtroom sat Lord Whitmore, an extremely wealthy nobleman dressed in fine silks and velvet, his face flushed with indignation at the interruption. On the other side sat representatives from the Merchants' Guild, equally well-dressed and equally annoyed. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Judge Harrison's voice boomed across the courtroom. He was known for running his court with strict discipline, and interruptions were not tolerated. Marcus walked forward steadily, his boots echoing on the polished stone floor. Emma stirred in his arms, her eyes opening to take in the grand courtroom with its high ceilings, stained glass windows, and rows of wooden benches. Marcus stopped in the center of the courtroom and met the judge's stern gaze without flinching. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but this child appeared at the palace gates this morning in this condition. She has been beaten and is seriously injured. She claims she has urgent testimony and specifically asked to see a judge. Given the severity of her injuries, and the desperation of her request, I believed this matter could not wait. The judge leaned forward, his expression shifting from anger to concern as he studied Emma's battered face and bloodied leg. "Set her down, Captain, gently." Marcus walked to a chair near the front of the courtroom and carefully lowered Emma into it. She winced as her injured leg touched the ground, but she remained silent, her eyes fixed on the judge with an intensity that seemed far beyond her years. Lord Whitmore stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. We are in the middle of important business concerning significant financial matters. Surely this matter with the street child can wait until we conclude our proceedings." His voice dripped with disdain as he gestured dismissively toward Emma. Judge Harrison turned his sharp gaze on Lord Whitmore, and there was steel in his voice when he spoke. "Lord Whitmore, in my courtroom, I decide what takes priority. A child arrives beaten and bleeding, requesting to be heard, and you suggest I make her wait while we discuss your property line dispute." "Sit down, sir." The nobleman's face turned red, but he sat down quickly, clearly unused to being addressed in such a manner. The judge turned his attention back to Emma, his expression softening considerably. "Child, what is your name?" Emma sat up straighter, despite her obvious pain, her small voice carrying clearly in the no-silent courtroom. "My name is Emma Thornton, Your Honor. I am 8 years old, and I have come to tell you about terrible things happening in Riverside District." A murmur ran through the courtroom at the mention of Riverside District. It was the poorest section of the city, a place where the wealthy rarely ventured and officials seldom paid attention. Judge Harrison raised his hand for silence. "Continue, Emma. Tell me what happened to you." Emma took a shaky breath, her small hands gripping the arms of the chair. "There are bad men in Riverside, Your Honor. They hurt people who cannot pay them money. They come to our homes and take whatever they want. If you fight back or say no, they hurt you." Marcus stood nearby, his hand still resting protectively near Emma's shoulder. He watched as the girl's courage began to build, her voice growing stronger with each word. "3 nights ago, they came to our house. My mama and papa run a small bakery. It does not make much money, but we have enough. These men said we had to pay them protection money every week, or bad things would happen to our shop and our family." Judge Harrison leaned forward, his full attention on Emma now. "Did these men give you their names? Can you describe them?" Emma nodded vigorously. "The leader is called Vincent. He has a scar across his cheek and wears a black coat. He has 4 men with him always. They carry clubs and knives. My papa told Vincent we do not have money to give him. Papa said we barely make enough to feed our family." Tears began rolling down Emma's cheeks, but she continued speaking, her voice never wavering. "Vincent got very angry. He said Papa was disrespecting him and needed to learn a lesson. His men held Papa while Vincent beat him. They made me and Mama watch. Then they started breaking things in our shop, smashing the ovens and throwing flour everywhere. Mama tried to stop them, and they hit her too." The courtroom was completely silent now. Even Lord Whitmore had stopped fidgeting, his face pale as he listened to Emma's testimony. Marcus felt his jaw tighten with anger, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Emma continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "That is when I tried to help Mama. I picked up a rolling pin and hit one of the men on his arm. He turned around and kicked me hard. I fell down the stairs, and that is how my leg got hurt." Judge Harrison's knuckles were white as he gripped his gavel. "Where are your parents now, Emma?" The girl's face crumpled, and for a moment it seemed she might break down completely. But she gathered herself, wiping her eyes with her dirty hands. "They took them, Your Honor," Vincent said. "If we ever told anyone what happened, they would kill Mama and Papa. But then yesterday, I heard Vincent talking to someone. He said he was going to sell my parents to work in some factories far away where nobody would ever find them. He said they would get rid of all the Riverside families who do not cooperate." Emma reached into her torn dress pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this in our shop after they left. It fell from Vincent's coat. I cannot read very well, but I think it is important." Marcus took the paper from Emma and handed it to the bailiff, who brought it to Judge Harrison. The judge unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning its contents. His face grew darker with each line he read. "This is a list," Judge Harrison said slowly, his voice filled with barely controlled rage. "A list of families in Riverside District. Next to each name is an amount of money and a date. Some names have been crossed out with the word relocated written next to them." He looked up at Emma with new respect and sorrow. "Child, you've been very brave to bring this to me. But I must ask you something difficult. Do you know who Vincent works for? Men like this usually answer to someone with power and money." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. "I heard him say a name once, Your Honor. He was talking to one of his men about reporting to someone, about how this person wanted the Riverside land cleared quickly because there were buyers waiting. The name, he said, was—" She paused, seeming afraid to continue. Marcus knelt beside her chair. "It is all right, Emma. You are safe here. Tell the judge what you heard." Emma looked up at Judge Harrison, her young voice clear and certain. "He said the name was Whitmore. He said Lord Whitmore was paying them to clear out Riverside District." The moment Emma spoke Lord Whitmore's name, chaos erupted in the courtroom. Lord Whitmore jumped to his feet, his face turning from pale to bright red in an instant. "This is slander. Pure fabrication from a street urchin trying to get attention. Your Honor, I demand this child be removed immediately and charged with making false accusations against a nobleman." Judge Harrison slammed his gavel down hard, the sound echoing like thunder through the courtroom. "Lord Whitmore, you will sit down and remain silent, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." The nobleman looked stunned, clearly unaccustomed to being spoken to with such authority. He slowly sank back into his chair, his hands trembling with either rage or fear. Marcus watched Lord Whitmore carefully. His years of experience reading people telling him everything he needed to know. The nobleman's reaction was not that of an innocent man being falsely accused. It was the reaction of someone whose carefully hidden secrets had just been exposed to the light. Emma remained seated, her small frame rigid with tension, but her chin held high with determination. Judge Harrison turned back to Emma, his voice gentler now, but still carrying the weight of authority. "Emma, this is a very serious accusation. You understand that, do you not? Accusing a nobleman of orchestrating violence and kidnapping is not something done lightly. Are you absolutely certain this is what you heard?" Emma nodded without hesitation. "Yes, Your Honor. I heard Vincent say it more than once. He told his men that Lord Whitmore wanted Riverside cleared in 3 months because he had rich buyers from the capital who wanted to build fancy shops and houses there." One of the Merchants Guild representatives stood up. A tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Your Honor, if I may speak? The Guild has heard rumors for months about someone buying up property in Riverside District through questionable means. Several of our members who own small shops in that area have reported threats and intimidation. We brought these concerns to the city authorities, but nothing was ever done." Judge Harrison made a note on his papers. "Why did you not bring this information to this court?" The woman looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, Your Honor, we were told that Riverside problems were not a priority. The city officials suggested our members sell their properties and relocate. Some who refused have since disappeared or suddenly changed their minds and sold for far less than their shops were worth." Marcus stepped forward. "Your Honor, if I may add something? In the past 6 months, palace guards have been called to Riverside 3 times for reports of violence and disturbances. Each time we arrived, the victims were either gone or too frightened to speak. We filed reports, but they seemed to disappear into bureaucracy. I always found that suspicious, but as a guard, I had no authority to investigate further." Lord Whitmore could no longer contain himself. He stood again, his voice shaking. "Your Honor, you cannot seriously be entertaining these ridiculous accusations. I am a respected member of this community, a nobleman with a spotless reputation. My family has served the crown for generations. Are you really going to take the word of a child and some paranoid merchants over mine?" Judge Harrison fixed Lord Whitmore with a stare that could have frozen fire. "Lord Whitmore, your reputation is precisely what is on trial here. And yes, I am inclined to believe this child, especially given what she has brought before this court. He held up the crumpled paper Emma had given him. This document contains information that a child her age could not possibly fabricate. It includes specific dates, amounts of money, and names of families. It reads like an operational plan for systematic displacement of an entire district. The judge turned to his bailiff. Send for the royal investigator immediately. I want every guard available assembled. We are going to Riverside District right now. Lord Whitmore's face went completely white. Your Honor, you cannot mean to disrupt my entire life based on this flimsy evidence. I have rights. I demand you grant me time to gather my legal counsel and prepare a proper defense. Judge Harrison stood, his impressive height and authoritative presence dominating the courtroom. Lord Whitmore, you have the right to legal counsel, and you will be afforded all proper legal protections. However, what you do not have is the right to delay justice while evidence disappears and victims vanish. Based on the testimony heard today and the document presented, I have probable cause to believe serious crimes are being committed. Guards, place Lord Whitmore under house arrest immediately. He is not to leave the palace, grounds, or communicate with anyone outside this courtroom until this matter is thoroughly investigated. 2. Guards who had been standing at the back of the courtroom moved forward quickly. Lord Whitmore backed away, his composure finally cracking completely. You are making a terrible mistake. Do you know how much influence I have? How many powerful friends? You will regret this. His threats rang hollow in the formal courtroom, and the guards took him firmly by his arms, leading him toward a side door, as Lord Whitmore was being escorted out. He suddenly stopped and turned back to look directly at Emma. His eyes were cold and filled with malice. You stupid little girl. You have no idea what you have done. Even if I go down, you think you are safe? You think your parents are safe? There are others involved in this, people far more powerful than me. You have signed your family's death warrant. Marcus moved instantly, stepping between Lord Whitmore and Emma, his hand on his sword. That is enough. Another word, and I will add, threatening a child to your charges. The guards dragged Lord Whitmore away, his shouting fading as the door closed behind them. Emma had gone pale, her earlier courage faltering in the face of such direct threats. Marcus knelt beside her again. Do not listen to him, Emma. He is just trying to frighten you because he knows he has been caught. Judge Harrison came down from his bench, something almost unheard of during proceedings. He approached Emma and knelt as well, looking the young girl directly in the eyes. Emma Thornton, you have shown remarkable courage today. I give you my solemn promise that we will find your parents and bring them home safely. Moreover, I will personally ensure that you and your family are protected from any retaliation. Do you believe me? Emma looked at the judge, searching his face for any sign of deception. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. I believe you, Your Honor. But please, we have to hurry. Vincent said something about a ship leaving in 2 days. If my parents are put on that ship, I might never see them again. The judge stood quickly, his jaw set with determination. Captain Marcus, this child clearly needs medical attention. Take her to the palace physician immediately. Bailiff, I want every available guard assembled in the main courtyard in 15 minutes. We ride for Riverside District at once. The courtroom emptied rapidly as people rushed to carry out the judge's orders. Marcus gently lifted Emma again, and she wrapped her arms around his neck tiredly. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, and the pain of her injuries was clearly becoming overwhelming. You did it, Emma, Marcus whispered as he carried her out. You were so brave. Emma's voice was barely audible. Will we really find Mama and Papa? Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Yes, I promise you we will search every building in Riverside until we find them. As they walked through the palace corridors toward the physician's quarters, servants and officials parted before them. Word of what had happened in the courtroom already spreading like wildfire, a young servant girl approached them timidly. Excuse me, sir? Is it true? Is it true that little girl stopped Lord Whitmore? Marcus nodded. She did more than that. She may have saved an entire district. The servant girl's eyes filled with tears. My family lives in Riverside. We have been so frightened. Thank you, little one. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. Emma managed a small smile before her eyes closed. Exhaustion finally overtaking her, Marcus carried her into the physician's quarters, where an elderly doctor with kind eyes immediately took charge. Set her on the examination table. Gently now. As Marcus laid Emma down, the doctor began his examination, his face growing more concerned with each injury he uncovered. This child has been severely beaten. Her leg may be fractured. She has a concussion and several cracked ribs. Whoever did this to her showed no mercy. Marcus felt rage building in his chest again. Will she recover fully? The doctor nodded slowly. With proper care and time, yes. She is young and strong. But, Captain, she needs rest, food, and safety. She is severely malnourished as well. This child has been living in terrible conditions for some time. Marcus looked down at Emma's small, battered form and made another silent promise. Things were going to change in Riverside District. Starting today. Outside the physician's quarters, he could hear the sound of guards assembling. Horses being saddled and orders being shouted. Judge Harrison was mobilizing a force to Riverside. Marcus wanted nothing more than to join them, to be part of bringing justice to those who had hurt Emma and so many others. But as he looked at the sleeping girl on the examination table, he knew his place was here, standing guard over the brave child who had risked everything to speak truth to power. The palace physician worked quietly and efficiently, cleaning Emma's wounds while she slept under the effects of a mild sedative. Marcus stood watch by the door, his mind racing with thoughts of what might be happening in Riverside District at that very moment. Through the window, he could see Judge Harrison mounting his horse in the courtyard below, surrounded by 20 armed guards. The royal investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Inspector Chen, rode beside him. Lieutenant James appeared at the door, his expression troubled. Captain Marcus, the commander, wants to see you immediately. Marcus glanced back at Emma, not wanting to leave her side. The physician seemed to sense his concern and spoke without looking up from his work. Go, Captain. I will watch over the child. She is safe here, and my assistant will remain with her every moment. You have my word. Reluctantly, Marcus followed James through the palace corridors to the commander's office. Commander Blackwood was a stern man in his 50s, career military officer who valued discipline and protocol above all else. He sat behind his massive oak desk, his face unreadable as Marcus entered and saluted. Captain Marcus, sit down. His tone was neutral, giving no hint of what was to come. Marcus sat, keeping his back straight and his expression professional. Commander Blackwood steepled his fingers and studied Marcus for a long moment before speaking. You caused quite a disruption today, Captain. Breaking protocol, interrupting a court proceeding, carrying an injured child through the palace without authorization. Some would call your actions reckless and insubordinate. Marcus met his commander's gaze steadily. Yes, sir. I understand that. I take full responsibility for my actions. The commander nodded slowly. What you did could have been a disaster. If that child had been lying, if this had been some elaborate scheme, you would have humiliated yourself, the guard, and the entire palace. You would have given Lord Whitmore grounds to sue for defamation. You risked your career, your reputation, everything you have worked for over 12 years. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but said nothing, waiting for whatever punishment was coming. Commander Blackwood leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, a slight smile touched his lips. It was also one of the bravest things I have seen in my 30 years of service. You saw someone in need, someone everyone else would have turned away, and you chose to help her. You gave that child a voice when no one else would. That took courage, Marcus. Real courage. Marcus felt surprise wash over him. This was not what he had expected. The commander stood and walked to his window, looking out at the now empty courtyard. I have been receiving reports about Riverside District for months. Reports of violence, disappearances, intimidation. Every time I tried to push for investigation, I was told it was not a priority. Resources were needed elsewhere. The truth is, I suspected someone with influence was blocking any real inquiry. But I had no proof and no authority to act on suspicion alone. He turned back to Marcus. You gave us that proof, Captain, because you had the courage to break the rules when the rules were wrong. Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he had not even realized was there. "Thank you, sir. But I must ask, what happens now? To Emma, to her family, to all the people in Riverside?" Commander Blackwood returned to his desk, pulling out a map of the city and spreading it across the surface. "Judge Harrison is leading a force to Riverside as we speak. Inspector Chen is with him. They will search every building, question every person, and find evidence of this operation. But Marcus, you need to understand something. If Lord Whitmore is truly behind this, he is not working alone. An operation this large, this organized, requires cooperation from city officials, possibly members of the nobility, maybe even palace staff." The implications of those words settled over Marcus like a dark cloud. "You were saying we might not be able to trust anyone?" The commander nodded grimly. "Exactly. Which is why I need you to do something for me. I need you to stay with that child. Emma is our star witness, and if Whitmore's threats were real, if there are others involved who feel threatened by what she knows, she could be in danger even here in the palace. I want you assigned as her personal guard until this matter is resolved. No one gets near her without your approval. Can you do that?" Marcus stood immediately. "Yes, sir. I will protect her with my life." As he turned to leave, Commander Blackwood called out one more time, "Marcus, that child is lucky you were at the gate this morning. Most guards would have turned her away. Do not ever lose that part of yourself that saw a person who needed help instead of just a rule that needed following. We need more guards like you, not fewer." Marcus returned to the physician's quarters to find Emma awake, her leg now properly splinted and bandaged. Her face had been cleaned, revealing features that would have been pretty if not for the bruises and swelling. She looked up as Marcus entered, and relief flooded her expression. "You came back. I thought maybe you had left to help find Mama and Papa." Marcus pulled a chair close to her bedside and sat down. "Judge Harrison and many guards have gone to search for your parents. My job is to stay here and make sure you are safe. I am your personal guard now, Emma. No one will hurt you again." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Really? You are going to stay with me?" Marcus nodded. "For as long as you need me to." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Emma spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Mr. Marcus, when I was walking to the palace this morning, my leg hurt so bad I wanted to give up. I kept thinking about what Vincent said, how nobody would believe me and nobody cared about poor people. But then I remembered something my mama told me once." Marcus leaned forward. "What did she tell you?" Emma looked out the window at the afternoon sun. "She said that in every dark place, there is always at least one light. Sometimes you have to walk through a lot of darkness to find it, but if you keep moving forward, if you do not give up, you will find that light. You were my light today, Mr. Marcus. When I saw you at the gate, when you picked me up and carried me, I knew I had found the light Mama talked about." Marcus felt his eyes stinging with unexpected emotion. In all his years as a guard, he had never felt more proud of his choice of profession than in this moment. "Your mama sounds like a very wise woman, Emma. We are going to find her and bring her home to you. I promise." They spent the next few hours together, Emma telling Marcus stories about her life in Riverside District, about her parents' bakery, about her friends and neighbors who lived there. Marcus listened to every word, mentally noting names and details that might help the investigation as evening approached. A messenger arrived with news from Riverside District. Marcus stepped out to receive the message, then returned to Emma's side. Her eyes were wide with hope and fear. Did they find them? Did they find Mama and Papa? Marcus took her hand gently. "They have made progress, Emma. They found the building where Vincent and his men were operating from. They arrested 5 men, including Vincent himself. They also found documents that prove Lord Whitmore was financing the entire operation, just as you said." Emma's face fell. "But they did not find my parents?" Marcus squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Not yet. But Vincent is talking. He is telling them everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. He has given them the location of a warehouse on the docks, where people were being held before being shipped away. Judge Harrison and the guards are heading there now. Emma, I think they are going to find your parents tonight." Emma closed her eyes, and Marcus could see her lips moving in silent prayer. The physician brought her soup and bread, insisting she'd eat something to regain her strength. Emma ate slowly, her mind clearly elsewhere. Marcus stayed beside her, keeping watch as the sun set and darkness fell over the palace. Candles were lit in the physician's quarters, casting warm, flickering light across the room. Hours passed with no word. Emma dozed fitfully, waking frequently to ask if there was news. Marcus remained alert, his hand never far from his sword, his eyes constantly scanning the room and the corridor outside. He had positioned himself, so he had a clear view of both the door and the window, taking no chances with Emma's safety. Near midnight, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Marcus stood quickly, his hand on his sword hilt. But when the door opened, it was Inspector Chen who entered, and she was smiling. "Captain Marcus," she said quietly, mindful of Emma, who was sleeping again. "We found them. We found Emma's parents and 16 other people who were being held at that warehouse. They are being brought to the palace right now. The palace physician is preparing rooms for them. Many are injured and need medical care, but they are alive." Marcus felt relief wash over him like a wave. "Emma will be so happy. How soon can they see her?" Inspector Chen glanced at the sleeping girl. "Let her rest tonight. Her parents are being examined and treated. They have been through an ordeal, and they need rest as well. But tomorrow morning, we will." After several minutes, Emma's father finally composed himself enough to look up and notice Marcus standing by the door. He gently extracted himself from his family's embrace and walked over to the guard, his eyes red from crying but filled with gratitude. "You are Captain Marcus? The guard who carried my daughter to the judge?" Marcus nodded, suddenly feeling uncomfortable with the attention. "I only did what anyone should have done, sir." Emma's father shook his head firmly. "No, you did what almost no one would have done. My daughter told us everything. She said most guards would have turned her away at the gate, but you saw her pain and chose to help. You carried her through the palace, even though it broke protocol. You stayed with her when she was frightened. You gave her the voice she needed to save not just us, but dozens of other families." He extended his hand. "My name is Thomas Thornton. My wife is Sarah, and we owe you a debt we can never repay." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "The debt is paid by seeing your family together again, Mr. Thornton. That is payment enough." Sarah Thornton approached as well, her movements careful due to her injuries. She took Marcus's hand in both of hers, her eyes searching his face. "Captain Marcus, our daughter, told us you promised her that good people still exist in this world. You proved that promise true. Thank you for believing her when she needed someone to believe." The physician cleared his throat politely. "I hate to interrupt this moment, but I must insist that everyone rests now. Mrs. Thornton. Mr. Thornton, you both need medical attention and sleep. Emma needs to heal. There will be plenty of time for reunions in the days ahead." The Thornton family reluctantly separated, though not before Emma made her parents promise they would not go far. "We are staying in rooms just down the hall, sweetheart," her father assured her. "We are not going anywhere without you again. Never again." After Emma's parents left to receive their own medical care, Marcus remained with Emma as she finally allowed herself to truly rest. The tension that had kept her going for days had finally released its hold. She slept deeply and peacefully for the first time since her ordeal began. Marcus maintained his vigil, though he accepted an offer from another guard to watch the door while he took a brief break to eat and change his uniform. When he returned, he found Judge Harrison standing outside the physician's quarters waiting for him. The judge looked tired but satisfied, his formal robes replaced with simpler travel clothes still dusty from the road. "Captain Marcus, walk with me," he said, and together they strolled through a quiet palace garden where they could speak privately. "I wanted to personally thank you for what you did. That child's courage combined with your willingness to break protocol saved countless lives." Marcus watched a fountain burbling peacefully in the center of the garden. "Your Honor, I have been thinking about what Emma said, about how she tried to get help before, but no one listened. How many other people are out there right now, trying to get someone to hear them, and being turned away because they do not have power or money or the right connections? Judge Harrison sighed deeply. Too many, Captain. Far too many. That is something I have been considering as well. This case has revealed serious flaws in our system, places where the vulnerable can fall through cracks and be forgotten. The judge sat on a stone bench, gesturing for Marcus to join him. I have been a judge for 20 years, Captain. I always believed I was fair and just. But this case has shown me that justice delayed or denied to some is justice denied to all. Those reports you mentioned, the ones that disappeared into bureaucracy, I should have been more aggressive in following up. I should have questioned why complaints from poor districts were treated as less important than property disputes between nobles. Marcus chose his words carefully. Your Honor, you took action the moment the truth was put directly in front of you. You did not hesitate or make excuses. You mobilized forces immediately and rescued those people. That counts for something. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. Perhaps, but I have decided that moving forward, things will change. I am implementing a new system where any citizen, regardless of their status or wealth, can bring matters directly to judicial attention without going through layers of bureaucracy. We are calling it the Open Court Initiative. He pulled a document from his coat. Every week, for one full day, my court will be open to anyone who wishes to speak. No appointments, no fees, no requirements, other than showing up. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, everyone gets the same opportunity to be heard. And I am working with other judges across the kingdom to implement similar systems. Marcus felt hope stirring in his chest. That could change everything, Your Honor. How many Emma Thorntons are out there who never make it to someone who will listen? Judge Harrison stood, looking back toward the palace. Exactly, Captain. And there is more. The investigation into Lord Whitmore has revealed corruption at multiple levels of government. The king himself has become involved. There will be trials, reforms, new oversight systems. Riverside District will be rebuilt not as luxury shops, but as improved housing for the families who live there. The king has ordered that all displaced families be compensated and given first rights to return to improved homes. Marcus felt amazement at how quickly things were moving. And Lord Whitmore? What will happen to him? The judge's face hardened. Lord Whitmore will stand trial for human trafficking, kidnapping, assault, bribery of officials, and conspiracy. Based on the evidence we have gathered, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. His title and lands have been stripped. His assets are being seized to compensate his victims. Several of his co-conspirators have already confessed in hopes of lighter sentences. They walked back toward the palace together, the morning sun now fully risen and warming the gardens. Captain Marcus, there is one more thing, Judge Harrison said as they reached the entrance. The king has heard about your actions. He wishes to meet you and Emma both. There will be a ceremony in 3 days. Once Emma has recovered enough to attend, the king wants to personally commend you for your service and Emma for her courage. He also wants to make a public statement about the reforms being implemented. Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. Meeting the king was not something he had ever expected. I am just a guard, Your Honor. I was doing my job. Judge Harrison smiled. You were doing far more than your job, Captain. You were doing what was right. There is a difference, and the king recognizes that. Be at the ceremony. That is not a request. It is an order from your sovereign. He walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the garden, processing everything that had happened in the past 2 days. When Marcus returned to Emma's room, he found her awake and drawing on paper that the physician's assistant had provided. She looked up with a bright smile that transformed her bruised face. Look, Mr. Marcus, I am drawing a picture of our bakery. When we go home, Papa says we are going to rebuild it even better than before. The king is going to help. Marcus sat beside her bed, looking at her careful drawing. That is wonderful, Emma. What else did your parents tell you? Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. They said, we do not have to be afraid anymore. All the bad men are in prison, and there are going to be new guards in Riverside to make sure everyone is safe. And Papa said Judge Harrison told him that what I did was very brave and important. Is that true, Mr. Marcus? Did I really do something important? Marcus took her small hand in his larger one. Emma, you did something extraordinary. You stopped bad people from hurting others. You saved your parents and many other families. You made the king and judges realize they needed to listen better to all people, not just rich and powerful ones. You changed the world, Emma. That is how important what you did was." Emma was quiet for a moment, absorbing his words. Then she looked up at him with wisdom beyond her years. "Mama always said one person can make a difference if they are brave enough to try. I did not feel brave when I was walking to the palace. I was scared and hurt and wanted to give up. But I kept thinking about Mama and Papa and how they needed me to be strong. So I kept walking, even though my leg hurt so bad. And then you were there, and you helped me. So I think maybe it takes two to change the world. One person to be brave, and one person to help them." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I think you are absolutely right, Emma, and I think you have taught me something important. I have been a guard for 12 years, and I always followed the rules, did what I was supposed to do. But you showed me that sometimes the rules are wrong. And sometimes helping one person matters more than following procedures. You made me a better guard and a better person." Emma smiled and went back to her drawing, adding details to her bakery with careful concentration. Over the next 2 days, Emma's recovery progressed steadily. Her leg was healing, though she would need crutches for several weeks. The bruises were fading, and her natural energy was returning. Her parents visited multiple times each day, bringing her favorite foods and telling her stories. The physician reported that both Mr. and Mrs. Thornton were also recovering well, though they bore emotional scars that would take longer to heal than their physical injuries. Marcus continued his vigil, rotating shifts with other trusted guards, but never straying far from Emma's side. He had grown fond of the brave little girl and her family. They represented something pure and good in a world that often seemed dark and complicated. On the evening before the ceremony, Emma's father asked to speak with Marcus privately. They stood in the corridor outside Emma's room, and Thomas Thornton looked nervous. "Captain Marcus, I need to ask you something, and please feel free to say no if it is too much." Marcus looked at Thomas Thornton with concern. "Of course, Mr. Thornton. What do you need?" The baker took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Emma talks about you constantly. You carried her when she could not walk. You believed her when she thought no one would. You stayed with her when she was frightened. You have become very important to her, Captain. And Sarah and I were wondering if you might consider being part of our family going forward. Not officially or anything formal, but perhaps you could visit us sometimes when you have leave from your duties. Emma needs good role models, people who show her that honor and courage matter. You are that person for her." Marcus felt touched by the request. "Mr. Thornton, I would be honored to visit your family. Emma is a remarkable young person, and I consider it a privilege to know her and you both. When you return to Riverside and rebuild your bakery, I will visit as often as my duties allow. You have my word." Thomas Thornton's face broke into a relieved smile. He grasped Marcus's hand firmly. "Thank you, Captain. You have given us back our daughter and our future. The least we can do is share that future with you." The morning of the ceremony arrived with clear blue skies and warm sunshine. The palace was alive with activity as preparations were made for the king's public address. Emma was dressed in a beautiful new dress, deep blue with silver embroidery, provided by the palace staff. Her leg was in a brace, and she would need to use crutches, but the physician had declared her well enough to attend. Marcus wore his formal guard uniform, polished and pressed to perfection. He would walk beside Emma's family as they made their way to the throne room. The grand throne room was filled with nobles, officials, guards, and citizens who had heard about Emma's story. News of the child who exposed a human trafficking ring had spread throughout the capital, and people wanted to witness the ceremony. Marcus could see representatives from Riverside District, families who had been saved by the investigation Emma had sparked. There were also reporters with notebooks, ready to document this historic moment. At the far end of the room, on an elevated platform, sat the throne. King Edmund was a man in his 40s with a strong presence and intelligent eyes. He wore the royal crown and robes of state, but there was warmth in his expression as he watched Emma being helped into the throne room by her parents and Marcus. The crowd parted to let them through, and Marcus noticed many people had tears in their eyes as they saw the small, brave girl making her way forward on crutches. When they reached the base of the platform, Emma's parents helped her kneel as protocol required, though Marcus could see the effort it cost her with her injured leg. King Edmund immediately held up his hand. "Please, child, there is no need for that. Someone bring a chair for Miss Thornton." A servant quickly brought a comfortable chair, and Emma sat gratefully, her parents standing protectively on either side of her. Marcus stood slightly behind them, his hand resting on his sword hilt in formal guard position. The king stood and addressed the assembled crowd, his voice carrying clearly through the vast room. "We are gathered today to recognize extraordinary courage and to acknowledge serious failures in our system of justice. Emma Thornton, a child of only 8 years, suffered terrible violence and witnessed her parents being kidnapped. Rather than succumb to fear, rather than accept the words of her attackers who told her no one would care, she walked through pain and danger to seek justice. And when she arrived at our palace gates, she found a guard who chose compassion over protocol." King Edmund gestured toward Marcus. "Captain Marcus could have turned this child away. Many would have. Our systems and procedures did not make it easy for someone like Emma to be heard. But Captain Marcus saw a human being in need, and he acted with the courage and honor that should define all who serve this kingdom. He carried Emma to Judge Harrison, ensuring her voice was heard. Because of these 2 individuals, we uncovered a criminal operation that had been destroying lives for years." The king's expression grew stern, but we must also acknowledge uncomfortable truths. This criminal enterprise operated for so long because we, the powerful and privileged, were not listening to those who needed us most. Reports from poor districts were treated as less important. Complaints from working families were dismissed. We failed in our most basic duty, which is to protect all citizens equally, regardless of their wealth or status. He paused, letting his words sink in. "That ends today." King Edmund picked up a scroll from beside his throne. "I am announcing several reforms. First, the open court initiative proposed by Judge Harrison will be implemented across the kingdom. Every court will hold regular sessions where any citizen can bring matters directly to judicial attention, without fees or bureaucratic barriers. Second, we are establishing a Citizens Protection Office with authority to investigate complaints against officials and nobles. Third, significant resources will be allocated to improving conditions in neglected districts like Riverside." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus saw many of the Riverside residents crying with relief and joy. King Edmund waited for silence before continuing. "Lord Whitmore and his conspirators will face the full weight of justice. Their assets are being seized to compensate victims and fund improvements to Riverside District. 3 corrupt city officials have been arrested, and more arrests may follow as the investigation continues. We will root out this corruption completely." The king then turned his attention directly to Emma. "Miss Thornton, what you did required tremendous courage. You were hurt, frightened, and had every reason to believe no one would help you. Yet you persevered. You spoke truth to power. You saved your parents and dozens of other families. Your actions have sparked reforms that will help countless people in the future. You are a hero, Emma, and I want the entire kingdom to know it." He descended from the platform, something highly unusual for a king, and approached Emma directly, from a velvet cushion held by an attendant. King Edmund picked up a medal on a blue ribbon. It was the Citizen's Medal of Valor, the highest civilian honor in the kingdom. "Emma Thornton, I award you this medal for exceptional courage and service to the kingdom. Wear it with pride, knowing you have made your kingdom better and safer." He placed the medal around Emma's neck. Emma touched it with wonder, her eyes wide. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she whispered. "I just wanted to save my mama and papa." King Edmund smiled warmly. "And in doing so, you saved many others. That is the mark of a true hero." He then turned to Marcus. "Captain Marcus, approach." Marcus stepped forward and knelt formally. The king picked up another medal, this one on a red ribbon. It was the Royal Service Cross, given to those who exemplified the highest ideals of service. "Captain Marcus, for 12 years you have served faithfully. But on one particular morning, you showed us all what true service means. You chose humanity over procedure, compassion over convenience. You gave a voiceless child a voice. For this, and for your continued dedication, I award you the Royal Service Cross." As the medal was placed around his neck, Marcus felt humbled and proud in equal measure. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I hope any good person would do." King Edmund helped Marcus to his feet. "But many would not have, Captain. That is why we honor you today." The king addressed the crowd once more. "Let the story of Emma Thornton and Captain Marcus remind us all that change often begins with individual acts of courage. One child refusing to stay silent. One guard refusing to look away. Together, they showed us where we had failed and gave us the opportunity to do better. That is the true power of courage and compassion working together." The ceremony concluded with thunderous applause. As Emma and her family were escorted from the throne room, people reached out to touch Emma's hand or offer words of thanks and encouragement. Marcus walked beside them, protective and proud. Outside the throne room, reporters gathered asking questions. Emma's father politely declined most interviews, saying his daughter needed rest and privacy to finish healing. But he did make one statement that would be quoted in newspapers across the kingdom. "My daughter is brave, but she should not have had to be. No child should face what she faced. No family should suffer what we suffered." If Emma's courage and Captain Marcus's compassion lead to real change, then perhaps our suffering will have meaning. We hope that in the future, people in trouble will find help before they are desperate and broken like we were. His words resonated deeply with those who heard them, adding to the momentum for reform. Over the following weeks, true change began to take shape. The open court sessions proved enormously popular, with citizens bringing forward concerns that had long been ignored. Several more corrupt officials were identified and arrested. Resources flowed into Riverside District, and reconstruction began on homes and businesses. The Thornton family's bakery was rebuilt with modern ovens and equipment, funded by the seized assets of Lord Whitmore. Thomas and Sarah Thornton reopened their business to great fanfare, with Judge Harrison and Captain Marcus among their first customers. Emma returned to school, though she was now something of a celebrity among her peers. Teachers reported she was kind to everyone, especially other children who seemed shy or scared. She had learned the value of speaking up and used her voice to stand up for others who struggled to stand up for themselves. The medal from the king hung proudly on the wall of the bakery, a reminder of what courage could accomplish. Marcus visited the Thornton family regularly, as he had promised. Emma would run to greet him whenever he arrived, though her limp from the leg injury remained slight but permanent. They would sit in the bakery while Emma did her homework. Marcus would tell her stories about Palace's life and his duties as a guard. Sometimes they would simply talk about ordinary things, books and friends, and dreams for the future. On one such visit, about 6 months after the ceremony, Emma asked Marcus a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Mr. Marcus, do you think what we did really changed things? I mean, really changed them, not just for a little while?" Marcus considered the question carefully, knowing Emma deserved an honest answer. "I think we started something important, Emma. Real change takes time. Some people will resist it because they benefit from the old ways. But we showed that change is possible, that ordinary people can make a difference. Other people will be inspired by what you did, and they will find their own courage to speak up when they see injustice. So yes, I believe we changed things in a real and lasting way." Emma nodded thoughtfully, then smiled. "Good. Because I have been thinking when I grow up, maybe I want to be a judge like Judge Harrison. Or maybe a guard like you. Someone who helps people who need help." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. "Emma, you can be anything you want to be. You have already proven you have the courage and heart for it. Whatever you choose, you will be extraordinary at it." Sarah Thornton brought them fresh bread and tea, sitting down to join the conversation. "Captain Marcus, Thomas, and I have been talking. We never properly thanked you for everything you did. The king gave you a medal, but we wanted to give you something more personal." She pulled out a package wrapped in simple brown paper and handed it to Marcus. He opened it to find a beautifully embroidered banner showing the palace gate with a figure carrying a child. Beneath it were words stitched in careful letters. "When the world turns away, courage carries us forward." Marcus felt his eyes growing damp as he studied the detailed needlework. "Sarah, this is beautiful. Did you make this?" She nodded. "I worked on it every evening for 3 months. It is not much, but I wanted you to have something that reminds you of what you did for us, for all of us." Marcus carefully refolded the banner, knowing it would hang in his quarters for the rest of his life. "This means more to me than any medal ever could. Thank you." They spent the rest of the afternoon together, sharing a meal and laughter, simply enjoying each other's company. As Marcus prepared to leave and return to his duties at the palace, Emma walked him to the door of the bakery. She looked up at him with eyes that still held some shadows of what she had endured, but were mostly filled with hope and happiness now. "Mr. Marcus," she said quietly, "on that morning when I was walking to the palace, I was so scared and hurt. I thought maybe I was going to die before I got there. But then I saw you at the gate, and you did not look at me like I was dirty or not important. You looked at me like I was a person who mattered. That is when I knew everything would be okay. Thank you for seeing me." Marcus knelt down so he was at eye level with Emma. "Emma, you always mattered. You always were important. I just made sure other people saw it too." She hugged him tightly, then pulled back with her characteristic bright smile. "Will you come visit again next week? Papa is teaching me to make cinnamon rolls, and I want you to try them." Marcus laughed. "I would not miss it for anything. You have my word." As he walked back through the streets of Riverside toward the palace, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The district was cleaner, safer, more vibrant. People walked without fear. Children played in streets that had once been dangerous, and it had all started with one child's courage and one guard's decision to help rather than turn away. Years later, when Marcus was an old man retired from service, people would still talk about the day Emma Thornton walked through pain and fear to seek justice, and the guard who carried her to it. The story became legendary, told to new guards as an example of what true service meant, told to children as proof that one person really could make a difference. Judge Harrison's reforms remained in place and had spread to neighboring kingdoms. The open court system had helped thousands of people who would have otherwise had no voice. Emma Thornton did eventually become a judge, one of the youngest in the kingdom's history. She never forgot where she came from or what she had endured. Her courtroom was known for being a place where everyone was treated with equal respect and dignity, where the powerful could not intimidate and the powerless could speak freely. On her desk, she kept a small copper plate with words she had written herself. "Justice delayed is justice denied. Justice for some is justice for none. Justice begins when we choose to listen." And Captain Marcus, in his retirement, would visit Emma's courtroom sometimes, sitting in the back and watching with pride as the little girl he had carried now carried the weight of justice on her own capable shoulders. Their story reminded everyone who heard it that courage comes in many forms, that sometimes the greatest act of heroism is simply refusing to look away from someone in need, and that when compassion meets courage, the world truly can be changed, one brave step at a time.